Hold the camera. Let's talk about that.
How's it going up there on the
Are you guys good? Yeah, we're gonna fucking DoorDash right now.
walk up? It's gonna be over. No, they kept going.
Yeah.
Then we're doing that. Okay,
We didn't even phase them.
oh, you know, who ordered the tax? You know. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shank Redemption Podcast. I say welcome back because I assume you guys are all my just absolutely excited listeners. We have got a great show today, but before we get into it, I want to give a big shout out to my sponsors. First one, Black Label Chronometers. Black Label Chronometers, headed up by Ryan Babb. What he does is he'll take classic LPs, old albums, and he will make custom clocks out of them, and he's made them for businesses all over the world now. And whatever design you can think of, he will be able to reproduce and even do it better than what you came up with. So check him out online. You can find him on Facebook and his website, Black Label Chronometers. Check it out. Also, check out myvive.com. That's myvyv.com. Now, what is myvive? Well, if you are suffering the 2 o'clock downs where you're just tired at work, or you're at the construction site and you're starting to drive the heavy loader off into the ditch, you run over some people, don't do that. What you do is you take some myvive, it's a nice smelling salt, crack it open, and it'll wake you up, give you that energy that you need to get through the rest of your day. So check out myvive.com, myvyv.com, and on either Black Label Chronometers or myvive, if you use Shank 15, that's SHANK 15, you'll get a nice discount. Okay, so we are back at the Underground Laugh Lounge, and I'm very excited because we have 2 comics that are at, I would say, opposite ends of their careers. I mean, not that Gerry is going out anytime soon, unless the government comes up to it. I've got Gerry Gobel and I've got Zach Weaver. Welcome, guys. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Happy to be here, Sean.
Okay, good talk. All right, so check out my. No, I'm kidding. So Zach, we'll start with you. You are. I don't even want to call you an open micer now because you've been a contest winner. You're going to be coming here in June and emceeing a show. But how long you been in it? What got you started? All the kind of boilerplate questions for a comic.
So truthfully, I would say I've been working about a year and a half, being an open micer, coming to open mics, being a comedian. Realistically, the very first time I ever did stand-up was the week before the world shut down. So I joke about that's how bad I was. The first time I did an open mic was, I did it, and then the very next week, COVID happened.
So it's like the Austin Powers meme with the lady, bring out the COVID!
Yeah, that's how it went for me. That's how it started. So I did my first 5 minutes. I don't know how it went. Felt like it went good. And then the world shut down. And then I didn't do comedy again until late 2022. And then I've been coming here since you guys opened. So I'm working my ass off trying to do the best that I can. Honestly, comedy has been in my life forever. I grew up, my parents have been divorced as long as I can remember. And I didn't always necessarily have the best childhood. So any form of comedy brought laughter to me that made me happy, and I needed it. Whether it was dark humor, whether it was slapstick, just those little things kind of brought it back and just made me happy, and I realized how much I enjoyed comedy. When I went through high school, I actually ended up working in an office through high school, like co-oping, and I would download as much comedy albums as I could at that point and listen to them all day. And just listen to them over and over and over again because it was something that made me happy, even though I sat in office and hated it.
So what was your flavor though? Like was it just everything you get your hand on? Or were there like specific kind of?
Honestly, anything I could get my hand on at that time. At that point, that was right at the beginning of John Heffron kind of making a big stand. Kostaki Kanop was coming around. Right at the beginning of Joe Coy, I remember hearing some really old Joe Coy stuff that I didn't realize he would blow up to be who he is today. That was also in that time period where the blue collar comedy guys kind of blew up. Right. Fox Really's been around a long time, but that's that late 90s where those specials came out. So it's just as much as I could digest, and then I would continue to just find things. I definitely came across Ronnie Carrington at some point. It's just downloaded whatever I could find. Some of them I don't even know who they are, to be honest.
Nice.
And then like moving forward from that, I just always liked comedy. And then I started tattooing for a living, which is what I do now. And I have a captive audience. I get to talk to people all day. And people would always, I would just get joke around because you got nothing else to do. People are like, you're funny, man. You're pretty funny.
So like, well, you've got the gun in them, and you're like, oh, by the way, punchline.
Yeah, no.
And they start doing that involuntary response, which we call laughter, which makes the whole body shake.
Listen, that's called free background on your tattoo.
What? All of the tattoo faces look like they have epilepsy.
Yeah. So
sorry to all my epileptic listeners.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to issue. You know what? I'm just going to my first comedy album. I'm going to call it Sean Shank Already Canceled.
And then going forward from that, I'm on a podcast called Truth and Justice with one of my best friends, Bob Ruff. And Bob and I just got talking one day, and he's like,
you're friends with him? Oh, gross.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Bob and I got talking one day, and he's like, you know what I've always wanted to try? Stand-up comedy. I'm like, me too. Like, I would fucking love to try this. So we literally signed up for a mic, and that was how bad we were. Is everything went to shit after that.
That's awesome. So, okay, very cool. And I am being facetious. Bob's a good dude. Zach is vastly funnier.
Yes. Suck it, Bob.
Yeah, once best friend. So we got, I don't want to talk about that podcast a little bit here, but okay, so on the other end of the spectrum, Stephen King of comedy, the Indianapolis guru. I mean, you've got, I don't even know how many nicknames, but you've been in stand-up now almost 31 years, right? 32, okay.
Well, I don't do the math well. 92.
92?
Yeah.
So yeah, you started 3 years before me, and I'm almost coming up on my 29th year, so you've got a over 3 decades long journey. You're headlining this weekend at the UL. You crushed it last night.
Oh, such a good night.
Absolutely just murdered the crowd. And it was very interesting from where I saw you back in 1995 when I started to today. Not that you're any less, out there with the way your thought processes are, I guess. But man, your comedy is so wildly different from back then. What in the journey what made you? Who hurt you? Why are you where you're at today, Jim?
Well, I'm basically a trauma-based comic. I started out getting beat up on school buses, and I was blackmailed. Basically, I would give them comic books to buy them off, and then at some point I ran out of comic books, so I had to learn how to tell jokes. So the Larry Wilde bedroom bathroom joke book was pretty much a survival necessity for me as a kid. So I told jokes. That's what I did on my lunch hours. That's what I did, because it was like I was always a new kid, so we moved a lot. So it was always like you had a new crowd, you had to work in a group of people.
You're a military kid, right?
Dad worked with Boeing. We were sort of military. He was only putting together the death weapons that would kill us all. 100 megaton nuclear warhead kind of stuff. But every 6 months we would move because radiation. So we'd move a lot. I go to new schools. I spent about 6 months in school and move. So my education was sketchy at best. I can't tell time, and I don't do good with money. Go figure. That was the 4th grade. What am I going to do?
Americans
moved 3 times that year. I don't even know what, I don't know how to add. But then I was like, I just always have been into comedy as far as like finding things to laugh at. And then when I graduated with 2 bogus degrees, and I don't know, there was this guy named Steve Fiesel that decided to have a writing class, and I went to his class, and it's so funny. This guy called himself a bookman, right? I don't know if he's still alive or not, if he made it through COVID. I don't know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. He had these books he would bring with him, and he wrote like titles on the ends of the books, and then he would bring them to the show, and he would show them to people to prove that it was there, And I was like, he had about 100 pounds of books with him every show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm learning a lot. Just tell him the title, But that's how I got hooked into it, and that's when I went to Ty Wilson, and then the comedy scene back then was kind of I don't know, everything goes in a cycle, and I think I hit the cycle right when it was coming back. And then I got hooked up with Crackers, and there's been a lot of strange parts of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
The first Church of Cannabis took me out of, I was doing, the crazy part, I quit my job. I lived in the basement of the first Church of Cannabis, and I was their propaganda minister. And I did TV shows and produced stuff. And then, like in the last year, that whole site got hacked, so all that stuff is gone. There's no record of it at all. But we did the Comedy Grinder.
Wow.
We were live streaming comedy before it was cool, and it scared all sorts of people, man. It scared people.
You guys
And then
got
the pandemic
attacks.
happens, and all of these guys are like, I'm doing comedy online and the internet. I'm like, that's what I was trying to get you guys to do back in 2016, but you didn't want it because it was scary. And now that you're forced to, this is all you got. So I feel like the pandemic was the great reset. It really was, because it killed off a lot of hangers-on. It brought, a baseline reset to everybody, because there was no positioning. Nobody could come back to be like, I'm the head of the scene. Well, there's no scene.
Yeah.
Therefore, anybody of the survivors that comes out of the mud flood is the person that gets to be the head comedian. Like, I've been doing this for 2 years. I'm the only survivor. And yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and speaking of mud floods, if you checked out my podcast, Blurred Lines, it's also on this network, we do discuss the mud flood. And if you don't know what that is, check it out, because we went through a reset back in the late 1800s. If you don't believe it, check out the White City from the Chicago World's Fair in the late 1800s. Everything you know is a lie. Anyway, so I want to talk about the first Church of Cannabis in that whole thing, because to gloss over what that was and how unique it was, and I'm not using that word loosely, and what you guys did and everything, the sabotage and all of the stuff that went down.
Yeah.
And I came down, was a part of a couple shows, but it was just, and you guys got attacked, and there were police coming after you. And can you just kind of give a bit of a background on everything that happened and kind of the rise and fall of everything?
Okay. Well, so it started out that Mike Pence came up with this RFRA law, which is Religious Freedom Act. And Hakeem, I can't remember who it was that came up. It was a friend of Bill Levin's. Got a hold of him and said, this would be a good time to start a church for cannabis, because they weren't allowed to discriminate against you because of your religion. So he did. So a whole bunch of people did, actually. That was the crazy part. So everybody had that idea at the same time, but Bill was the only guy that got the paperwork in. So he sent the paperwork into the IRS to get our LLC paperwork, and they cranked it back out to us just like that. But we made a fatal mistake. We put the word cannabis in the title of the business. And if you have the title of cannabis in your business, you can't bank anywhere. You can't get a GoFundMe account. You can't take donations. You can't cash a check. You can't get a bank. We went through maybe 15, 20 banks because they kept kicking us out once they found out who we were, because the laws in banking are so harsh. So right off the bat, we kind of started out by shooting ourselves in the dick, because we couldn't collect money. It all had to be cash, right?
It's a bad shot.
It was a bad shot right off the bat, but we were going to go through with it. And I had a waking dream from Otto the comic. He had just died. And he came to me in this dream and said, you need to go to this church. It's going to change your life. And it was a vivid dream. It was crazy. It was one of those. So I go to the church. I talk to Bill. We're doing opening day. I was busted for possession 364 days before the opening of the church. I saw on day 365 was the opening. So the last day of my probation, if I got busted there, I was looking at a year in jail. But I was like, this is monumental. I'm going to go here. So I stood in the back of the room with all the anonymous guys. The police came out crazy in force. They put a monitor on the pole right over where we would drive into the church so they could get license plates of everybody that came in. They had went around the neighborhood and they cordoned everything off in yellow caution tape in every yard, because they were like, these stoners are coming to take over your town. You want to park in your yard? And they were like, no. So they cordoned it off. So it was like 6 blocks of yellow tape. Then every cop in town made a play date out of that day. They had guys rolling around 12 deep and bicycles riding by, and then a few minutes later all the guys on the motorcycles would come riding by, and then all the guys in the cop cars would come riding by. Police presence was there. We got threatened. We were called a cult. They told Bill he was Jim Jones, and so there's still a court case on that for libel, because that was like, did it hurt our income? Well, it did, sort of, but not. I don't know. Anyway, but they had really threatened us. They were like, anybody, if a single person lights up, we're busting all of you. We're going to arrest all So I'm in the back of the room, kind of like, this is a really stupid place to do like a last stand, but Otto told me to come here, so here I am. And I was the minister of humorous warfare. So I had to come up with, basically, when you're trying to create a religion, you need media, right? You need events and stuff, and you need stuff to put out there that shows that you're doing stuff. So we started the Comedy Grinder, which was a live streamed comedy show. It was a 2-hour show. And we had a sponsor, so we were doing radio. So it was like I had a 10-minute break in the middle, but I had to keep it alive the whole time, supposedly. And then we did the Kansas City Limits, which was our Austin City Limits knockoff. We had cannabis-based bands come in and play. We record live albums for them. And there were a lot of really great bands. And then it was the Canna Film Festival, which is where I was a 6-foot cannabis puppet. And Janet, Granny J, the administrator of the place, she was Granny J. She was my gardener. And we'd watch propaganda movies, and we would talk smack between the bits, like doing, like, you know, Sammy Terry. But we put on a lot of stuff. But then it was like things got weird. We had it was like the 9th shooting group for Duck Dynasty wanted to do a live, like they wanted to do like a reality show. And so what happened was all of these people that were in the church suddenly didn't care so much about the positioning of what we were trying to accomplish, but they all wanted to be TV stars. So the infighting started, and that's where things got really weird. We had somebody going around sabotaging all of our stuff. We had people who were coming from the neighborhood angry at us, and we didn't know till later that basically our quote-unquote love counselor was an inside guy who was trying to wreck us. And so all these bad things that were happening, he had a hand in a lot of it. Like he would go around to the neighbors and threaten them and use a false badge and pretend to be a cop. And then they would come at us, and of course me, I was white knighting like crazy, so I'd fight anybody that came up and messed with us. I was like, no, you ain't doing this to us. So what it was a perfect circle of perpetuation, because he knew that I would go after people for coming after us because I wasn't having any of them. And so that's where it happened. And once we found out he was our Kaiser Soze, that's when Janet and I split town. We wound up living in a DEA agent's house. And that's where we disappeared for a while. Now I'm living in the house of a Freemason whose brother happens to be an FBI agent who knows Jim Comey. Just not weird at all.
Okay, so then coming back to
Is that here? It's so weird, dude. So weird.
Since you are behind a very popular crime story, true crime
podcast,
Yeah.
everything you've just heard, like, what is your, because you talk about this stuff every week, right?
Yeah.
And everything you've just heard, like, how does that, like, with what they were, because I can tell you before you answer, I was down at this church. These guys were all love, light, smoke pot, it's healing, have fun, love.
Cure for cancer.
Yeah, all the things. And it was never anything malicious. If you saw their 12...
Deity doesn't.
Deity doesn't.
Yeah.
It was embrace your fellow human being, like all the good tenets of Christianity, anything. So I just know from my personal experience, I never saw, dealing, negativity, any of this stuff, that was there. But hearing all the things with the cops and everything else, kind of, what is your feel off of how this went down?
So Truth and Justice is a wrongful conviction podcast. We long form cover wrongful convictions. So with this being said, none of it surprises me. We deal with police corruption weekly. We deal with falsified reports. We see falsified reports. We see CIs coming forward that say they were pressured to say certain things. Obviously, so they said your minister of love was going around bullying people into coming forward. Right. We see it all the time. I mean, we see it in almost every case that we deal with. There is some sort of detective or somebody that's gone forth and made a person come forward and say, I saw Sean do this. Or, we caught Gerry here with weed.
Well,
but hold on, we caught you with weed, and I'm going to take you down unless you tell me that Sean committed this murder.
Right.
And most people think for themselves, right? They're trying to save themselves. Like he just said, he's going away. If he gets caught on that 365th day, he's going away.
Right.
So he's protecting himself. So he's like, "Fuck, I don't like Sean."
Right.
Sean did it. So everything that I just heard, none of it surprises me, honestly. And with that being said, I'm not trying to cover my own ass. I do truly believe there are good law enforcement agents out there. There is absolutely, but there are so many of these bad eggs out there that just taint everything.
Right.
So I mean, everything you just said, none of it honestly surprises me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, and we were really a threat because one of the things we were looking at doing. So we Canatarians were recognized as a religion. So we made it. We won the first round, but we lost the appeal, or we lost in the context of being able to smoke, but we won the ability to be a religion because there was enough content. And Janet is a spiritualist, so the spiritual side we were covered on. The problem became is like, I think what they perceived down the road is what a threat we were, because my plan was we were going to go to everybody's houses and we were going to make sanctuaries. And so we come to your house, pop a thing on the wall, Dominus Epoximus, congratulations, you're a Canatarian, you now have an altar and it can't be seized or messed with by the cops because it's a religious sanctuary. Because according to Riffer, that would have been legal. So we would have killed the drug war if we could have done that. I was ready to go house to house and anoint every house. All you had to do is smoke us out, bro. Smoke us out at $50 for paperwork, you're in, you're safe. You can't have your stuff stolen, they can't take your crap. And they knew that, and I got targeted. I'm in the court paperwork for the Canatarian stuff. I'm hauling around a 6-foot inflatable penis on a 2-wheeler wearing a biohazard suit. That they got a picture of me during the 420 march because it was my idea for the sanctuaries, because that to me was the natural extension of creating a church, is once you do churches you can create sanctuaries. So the drug war would have been over, because the only reason it persists is for asset seizures. Get rid of the assets, they got no reason to come at you. And you know what, and the thing is, the DE agent that we knew, she said they don't even care about weed. It's not even a thing for them. It's not a priority as much as the other dangerous stuff, because they know on a level, most law enforcement knows on a level, marijuana's not killing anybody. It's never done it, never will. The only guys that get killed with marijuana are the ones that get hit by the bales falling out of the planes. So it's harmless. And then the cure for cancer is also tied into that. So once you start looking at how many cancers cannabis can cure, cannabis oil, then you see the secondary motivation to get rid of it is because you're threatening a cancer industry that we're all $1 million a piece of value to them. Whether they cure us or not, they're going to get paid. But if you take that away from them, there's a whole branch of the industry that falls apart. I mean, and justifiably so, because it is a curable thing. There's some cancers that can't cure, but there's a lot of, and I saw it. If I hadn't seen it and been there and seen all the testimonials from all these people, Otto Connick, when he died, I saw cannabis oil in action. I saw it work. But you have to have it for it to work. And if you've got help you if you get in the program and they put you on the program, for if you're caught with weed in your system, they take you out of the pain program. That's the most sadistic shit ever. You're gonna die, and they're worried about whether you got weed in your system. Well, it's because they don't really want you knowing that you could survive this. It's doable. I've seen it, and so there were a lot of reasons to get rid of this. Yeah. And the harassment, and we were under wiretaps. We knew it. They told us they had to because they were investigating us for the court case. But my face is in the paperwork. So everybody was wondering why you're paranoid, Jerry. I'm like, dude, I've been on watch list. I've been watched. People don't understand that. It's like the moment that you speak out against the government's interests, you become a target. Whether or not it's a good interest or a bad interest, they just don't want you around. So,
So with you and Ruff's podcast, then, have you guys caught flack? Have you?
Absolutely. And what I can't say is we're getting ready to, our next season of the case is actually a local case, so we're fairly concerned moving forward how this is going to go. But yeah, we have absolutely caught flack. We've had some issues. We're dealing with a case in West Memphis, Arkansas, a very well-known case that we've been fighting with for years, that we have become big on. And we went down last summer to a trial that they wouldn't let us in the courtroom. They said they were under COVID protocol. They would only let 12 people in the courtroom. We are part of the defense party. We were actually, I'm friends with the defendant now. Okay. We were in his party. We weren't allowed in the courtroom. They made us stand in the parking lot. The police officer, we did deal with a very nice police officer who came out and was like, look, I don't know why they're doing this to you guys, but I need you guys to move back to the parking lot because we were at the door. And we're like, what the hell? And he's like, listen, if it comes from me, it's going to be a problem. Right. He's like, it needs to come from you guys to push everybody back. But we went out to the parking lot. Mind you, this is West Memphis, Arkansas in July. So it is 100 degrees. We're in a blacktop parking lot. We run down to Walgreens, get a couple cases of water, come back. There's probably 500 supporters at this point outside. We are outside handing water out, and the police officer comes out and he says, listen, they're watching you guys from inside. They have cameras out here, they're watching you guys from inside. Anybody that's sitting in a car has to leave. So they've forced everybody to stand outside in 100-degree heat.
What dicks.
Gets better or worse. The officer, again, as we're talking to him, and we're like, what the hell is going on? He's like, listen, guys, I don't know what. He's like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, we haven't been under COVID protocol in 2 years. He's like, they don't want you guys in there. In about 15 minutes, everybody from the courtroom piles out. And we're like, oh, the prosecution must have joined forces with us. We're going for DNA testing. Prosecution must have said, yes, let's do it, right? They come out and they're like, they won't hear the trial. They won't even hear our evidence. So they literally brought everybody down to West Memphis, Arkansas, brought us all down there, thousands of dollars. We had experts there to testify that all of this could have been a memo. They do this all the time where they will hear or won't hear a trial. They brought us all in there for the judge to say we won't hear the trial. All because of verbiage, because these gentlemen were released on an Alford plea, meaning they plead guilty, but they can maintain their innocence. It's a super weird plea, but
Yeah.
they plead the Alford plea. They are on parole for 10 years. This just coincides with, it's just past 10 years of them being off, so they're now off parole. And the verbiage in there says they're able to test evidence as long as they're in the state's custody. And now that they're no longer on parole, they're no longer on state's custody.
Oh.
What
But I mean, these people
bullshit.
literally have cameras outside the courtroom, and there's somebody in there watching us to make sure that we're not, to force us to leave or to force us to stand outside.
Before we go any further,
Yes, sir.
Zach, are you feeling suicidal at all?
No,
Are you happy?
I'm good.
Jerry, you feeling suicidal at all?
Never been suicidal.
Happy?
Yes, I'm very happy.
All right. I am not suicidal at all, and I am also happy. So it's on the record, and this is going to be online. So just in case, anybody, Vince Foster's us with 2 shots to the back of the
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
I don't
head.
even know how to load a gun. Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a doorknob and a gym band, but I don't exercise, so.
Dude, this is what's crazy. So this is one of the reasons I have this podcast, because the face that people see, like last night with Jerry and his, we'll call it an experience. Look, there was a redneck from Texas, a wheat purveyor, who came up here and they just wanted to see some comedy. And you got him by the end, but god dang, I know he was sitting there going, what in the hell is it? This is the apocalypse, this is what's bringing April 8th.
Yeah.
This is why. But people see like the surface. They see the comic, they see like, oh, Zach goes up and he tells his jokes and very affable and everything. But then you start scraping away. It's like, no, you're an advocate. No, you've been fighting against corruption. You're a brilliant tattoo artist. You got a kiddo that's it made it to state in wrestling this year. Very fantastic. Jerry. You teach classes down in Indianapolis. You help run a club. You did the Church of Cannabis thing. It's like, we are so much more than this one kind of little finite skill that we have, and like you start pulling back the layers of everything, it's just amazing to find out, because when people know that you're a comic, that's generally what they see. It's like, you are comic, okay? And this obviously goes well beyond that shit. So I'm gonna start listening to your podcast. I didn't even know it existed until today.
All right.
It was brought up, so I'm definitely. We'll actually give everybody, what is the podcast?
It's called Truth and Justice. You can find it everywhere. It's all over the place. It's a 2 episode per week show. Sunday's episode is the main episode. It's more Bob talking, storytelling episode. We go through the episode. He talks about what's going on with the case. Then we have what we call the Friday follow-up, which I'm the co-host of, and we answer any questions. We talk about our thoughts, theories. We have a lot of listener engagement. We kind of go back and forth with them on that. So it's a two show a week podcast. Sunday, Friday. We just deep dive. I mean, it's a super, super deep dive. Some people love it. Some people don't like it, because all this true crime scene is there's a lot of like one-off where every episode's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
We will have a season that might be 70 episodes, 70 original episodes with a Friday follow-up on one case. And we deep dive into every element. We have a case where we're working on a case out of Houston, Texas, and there was a ransom letter. And I think we spent a week talking about font. You know, so I mean that's the little nuances. But with that being said, the podcast has gotten 2 people released from prison.
Sweet.
Damn.
We're working to get the West Memphis Three, which is the case I'm talking about, exonerated.
That was the one you were talking
Yeah,
about?
that's what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
shoot, I didn't know that was the one you were
Yeah,
talking
I've
about.
become good friends with Damien Eccles.
Oh, wow, okay.
We're working to get them exonerated. We are putting up all the funding to DNA test that case. That's what we're dealing with the court right now, is trying to get DNA testing for them to release the evidence to our private lab. We have a private lab that's willing to push it to the forefront.
Do you guys have a GoFundMe that's attached to that or anything like that?
We do.
Should know
Yeah,
that?
I don't know what it is right off the top of my head, but we always have something up.
Okay.
Right now,
Well, that explains a lot, dude.
the new case we're doing is going to be local. The last case we just did was out of Pinyon Pines, California. Another, we believe, wrongful conviction, triple homicide, where the defendant was an ex-boyfriend that they believe to be the murderer, but there's a ton of evidence proving that he was nowhere near the scene of the crime, and that there's a lot more going on there. But we really tackle deep dive onto every episode that we do.
Okay, well, let's change shipping lanes here, speaking of corruption. Our wonderful government, who should never trust. I want to ask you guys about this then, because of your perspectives and things. The Maryland bridge disaster, all right? What are your, we'll start with Gerry.
Uh-oh.
Well, the snipers have found us, guys. It's been nice.
I'm so sorry.
Jerry, what are your thoughts on just that situation? We'll just go.
Okay,
easy.
well, for me, the way I look at things when events happen, I like to look at all the peripheral information that comes along with it. It always makes it kind of seem like somebody wrote it. Like, how many coincidences are coincidental? Like, you get the Francis Scott Key Bridge, you got the Salvador Dali boat, you got a Ukrainian captain, you got the cops saying they shut off the bridge in just a matter of seconds to keep people from getting hurt. And oh boy, and supposedly now they dropped the anchor. And I'm just like, there's so many things about the whole story that just stink. And, you know, and then the video footage of the actual bridge falling down, there's a couple of fire areas in there, and people are like, oh, it's electrical cable split. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. Wouldn't it convince sparks more than fire? But that's another story altogether. But there's a huge explosion down at the other end of the other pylon. After the bridge falls, this huge bunch of fire comes out. What was that? And why, if this shipping lane is the most important military shipping lane in the world, this is the most important, why isn't the military cleaning it up? And why aren't insurance adjusters allowed to go out and look at the damage? I'll tell you why, because this is an orchestrated event. It's not, I don't find it to be real at all. I'm finding it hard to be, you know, and everybody goes, oh, it's crazy because you think it's a conspiracy. I'm like, you know, conspiracy is something that they slander in terms of like not knowing anything, but it really, a conspiracy theorist is a guy who knew the truth about what they did to JFK. So to say it's a conspiracy anymore is almost a dog whistle. It means it's true. I mean, if the media, who's supposed to cover stuff so much and so well, only calls it one thing every time, you start to look at these things and not a lot of things make sense on them, you know? So from my standpoint now, I think it's a hustle. I think it's a fear move. I think it's, now you have to worry about the invasion at the southern border because people are coming over the border. Now we're gonna have Chinese nationals coming over that are ready to fight, or you know, military age men that the media keeps talking about coming over the border. It's all this fear porn. It's really what it comes down to. I think the idea is to make us compliant to agree to stupid shit like we did during the COVID thing. And that COVID thing was totally over the top. There's a lot of people who didn't like me because of my response to it, but my response to everybody on that was, fuck you. It's the flu. And if you're going to shoot an experimental vaccine in your system without knowing what's on the ingredients list, and you see that the only people that are getting coverage are the people that give you the vaccine, then you got to ask yourself a lot of questions about what's really going on. And I've been asking myself a lot of questions. I got red pilled while I was at the church. If the government hadn't spied on me, if the government hadn't shown my face in paperwork that I was not attached to in a court proceeding, I might be a little less inclined to believe that. But the fact that they've stuck their nose so far up my butt, I don't trust any of them. I don't find it to be. I would like to see some close-up shots of that wreckage. Then let's see where did that fire come from?
Agreed.
And now all of a sudden there's hazardous materials on this thing, and this is a ship that already had a previous problem running into a dock. Okay, it already did that once before. This isn't the second time this boat's run into shit. So everybody acts like it's a brand new thing, and it's not. This is the second time this boat has done this particular thing. You know, so when you start adding things up and looking at it, and you know, maybe it's circumstantial, maybe that. You know, a good healthy dose of paranoia wouldn't hurt a lot of you folks. You might live a little longer.
Or know what you're being slaughtered for.
Don't agree to everything that everybody says just out of emotional response. Everything's emotional response. That's how they played all of this stuff so far. So feels.
So, okay, but you're pretty, okay, now with your experience with, you both have experienced a lot of corruption. You deal with it weekly. Well, you both do, but what's your take on this whole thing?
So, I mean, I'll start by saying I have hope tattooed across my knuckles. I hope that it's genuinely an accident. I always hope. I try to see the good in people. I lean towards it's a misdirection. In comedy, we talk about misdirections. I'm worried that it's a misdirection. The Diddy stuff, the Puff Daddy, Sean Combs stuff came out with the sex trafficking.
Right.
Every time this comes out at such high level that something happens.
And Homeland Security's handling it too.
Yeah, something happens, right? So is it to distract us from whatever this sex trafficking that's happening? Because we've already seen it once. We've seen it with Epstein. And we know right now that this will never get out because it is too big, which is fucking scary. But it will never get out. We'll never know the extent of it because it is too big and too many people will fall. So that's the way that I look at it isn't, maybe there is some Homeland Security stuff. They're trying to, warmonger us. But I always look at the misdirection. I always there is this crazy something happening over here with this sex trafficking with Puff Daddy, Sean Combs. Right. We need something to deter from that right now because we don't need to know that XYZ over here was involved with that too.
Right.
Well, there's further layers to it, but the problem I'm having at this very moment is I can't get out of my head how weird it would be to get in a fist fight with you, and the last thing that I would see coming at me is hope. So that's kind of messing with me. But did you know that Russia has sent warships into the Red Sea because the saber rattling is, the egregious attacks on. I don't understand the level of anti-Semitism that has hit the world. This country. It's outstanding or insane to me, but they are now down there in the under the flag of we are with Palestine and against Israel. Now, if you pull back and you want to get theological on shit, and this is happening while the P. Diddy and the ship hitting the thing is going on, that's a massive move by the Russians. And if you look to the Bible, and it would say in the end times, Gog and Magog would come against Israel. Well, they're referring to Russia, all right? And now this is happening, and they're the theologians that have caught this move. When you go back to page 17 in the newspaper, they're going, holy shit, bro. With all the stuff that's going on, signs and all the other things, you may not believe in anything in Christianity or any of, Hopi traditions that talk about this shit, all right? Native American religions, with the Great Spirit and the Manitos and things like that. All religions have an end time scenario, and all this stuff that's happening is just piling up and piling up and piling up. And then the thing happened with Russians being down there, and that's the first one where I went, shit, this is getting awfully close to going by the absolute playbook. And then it brings me back to what the fuck is going on with this eclipse on April 8th, because I'm 48, all right, and you're a few years older than me.
Some grew up in the
50s. You're
39.
39. Okay, so relatively close-ish, right?
Yeah.
We've all been through solar eclipses before.
Right.
You know, some more drastic than others, and lunar eclipses. We've all seen this stuff. This is the first time I can ever remember schools are shutting down. National Guards have been deployed. So there's going to be cell phone disruptions. Fucking why?
Well, they're saying the cell phone disruption happened because everybody would be on their phone at the same time.
What? Okay, so we start over here. This, and we'll start. Zach, this thing coming up on the 8th. What is? And I know. Hope. All right.
Yeah.
I get it. Is this one pray? You better fucking hope and pray, son of a bitch.
That's great.
What's your thoughts on just one, the April 8th thing for one, but for two, the fact that Indiana's under a state of emergency now already
Right.
before it's happening.
Uh-huh.
So what
And
are
who's
your
paying for it? Homeland Security. They're the ones giving all the money.
Yeah, which conversely means we're paying for it. But what are your thoughts on this?
So I grew up around science. Science is a big part of my life, always been a big part of my life. Religion has not been a big part of my life. To me, this is just an astrological phenomenon. My son, actually the wrestler, is named Sagan. He's named after Carl Sagan, which is an astrophysicist. I mean, he's probably the world's most famous astrophysicist.
Yeah.
My son's named after him. So science has always been a part.
Okay, I have to disagree with you. Brian May from Queen, move on. Sir Brian May. So anyway, as we were saying.
So I don't think it's more than a phenomenon. Now the other things that I can see, the Indiana being a state of emergency, the path of the eclipse is traveling pretty much the entire distance of Indiana. They're worried about travel. This happened 2018, 2017. And if you talk to anybody that went down, my grandparents went down to Missouri to see it. They said, I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't get anywhere close to the actual path because there were so many people down there. And I think that's more of why they're doing this, saying that it's, there's this huge thing coming because there's going to be traffic. I mean, we're leaving. I took my kids out of school. We're going to go see it because it's such a big deal. It's not going to happen again in my lifetime. I think they said the next one that's a full eclipse is 80 years from now. I mean, I hope to be alive, but I won't be. I mean, that's just is what it is. So that's the way I lean. I've always been around science. That's my life. So I try not to look deeper than that.
Okay. All right. Let's talk to a reasonable person. Gerry.
Well, okay, so there's some questionable behavior as far as like how they're funding it. So if Homeland Security is giving all this money to Indiana to find their website, go to the indiana.gov website and look up eclipse stuff. It's crazy. Countdown clock, get your your goggles, you can go your locations, you should have a full tank of gas, you should have a full thing of food, you should have all of this stuff that you should be planning for your emergency for something that's going to last 4 minutes. So it makes sense. And on the site too, they also say that there's a point, because it's a total eclipse, you'll be able to take your glasses off and stare directly at the eclipse for a few seconds, which they encourage, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. Because if you don't know how to tell time, you're probably going to be blind or insane. Or you'll see the guy working in the sun. You'll be like, hey, there it is. Is that Truman?
Oh, that's...
So I don't feel, I feel like it's like you're setting up, okay, so the path of the eclipse, this eclipse and the other two, forms the Aleph, which is the Alpha and the Omega symbol, right? And then you've got the path of it. One of them's coming down 7 Ninevehs, and the other's coming up 7 Salems, and they're going to coincide at the point of Little Egypt, where the first cicada blossom from 13 to 16 years is going to happen all at the same time. Little Egypt's going to have a plague of biblical proportions. During the solar eclipse, it's the Alpha, the Omega. How can you not make people want to see that? Right? It, to me, is like the coding of the entire event is leading up to something, right? So if I were going to speculate, I'll just tell your viewers right now, if at any point in time you're staring at the eclipse and Jesus comes to you and tells you you're doing it wrong, it's actually the deep state. Sorry, it's a lie. That's Project Bluebeam. There is no such thing. Jesus ain't going to come back. Buddha's not going to come back and tell you you've been doing it wrong. That's if it does and I'm right and that happens, great. If I'm wrong, I'm just a crackpot. Fine. I don't care. I don't care. I'm just watching it happen, and everybody, it's like I'm very fluid in my belief in conspiracy. I accept all things as potential, and I don't say things are not possible. We're going to wait and watch and see what happens. But I'll tell you what, though, if there's a big religious awakening that happens out of this because people think they saw God, look up Project Bluebeam.
which is legit, just
Which
like
is legit.
Project Paperclip.
Right.
And a whole bunch of other shit, just like chemtrails, which everybody says, that's not real, not anything. Actually, we have verified paperwork from our government from the 60s that came from the Air Force that they were seeding the clouds and putting the shit into the clouds. So it's been admitted that it's been done.
Right.
All right. It's just that people see it and they're like, hey, that's happening, and then they're like, oh no, this is conspiracy. It's like, no, here's your paperwork. You guys wrote it. But I've got a dad joke. Speaking of Salem, do you know what you call the Salem witch trials? Easy bake coven. I found no home for that joke, and I wrote that like a week ago. So, all right. So,
Another asset seizure moment.
so, all right, cool. All right, so we're gonna have to wrap this up because literally I could talk to you two for hours. I can't wait to get into your podcast, man. That thing
that's
sounds
great.
awesome. But let's start with you. Okay, so your podcast is what again?
Truth and Justice.
Okay, and where can people find you, and where are you next as far as stand-up?
As far as Truth and Justice, it can be found on any podcatcher that's out there. I mean, it's all over the place. We've got to make sure it's out there. You can find our live episodes on YouTube. They are put out to our Patreon, and they are released about a month afterwards to just general public on YouTube. You can find them there. As far as myself, you can find me at Conception Gallery, where I tattoo for a living. My next stand-up date, I am here next Thursday for the open mic. I'm on that show. But the next date that I have lined up at the moment is April 26th at the Knights of Columbus in Watervliet, Michigan. May 4th, I will be at the Wagon Wheel down in Warsaw, opening for, and I'm spacing his name right now. Ryan Nylander.
Oh, Niemiller?
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge. Very
I'm
nice.
opening for him down at the Wagon Wheel on May 4th.
Very cool.
I'll
That's
be
a great
back
show.
here in June, middle of June, opening for Kevin Lee.
That's right.
So,
Very nice.
and I'll have a ton more dates sprinkled in as we go.
Very cool. And Mr. Gobel.
I got a website coming up called GerryGobel.com, but on Facebook, if you really want to get into trouble, I got two websites that I put up, pages. One of them is called the Tinfoil Troll, where I post conspiracy theory that gets checked all the time. And then I have one called Joe Biden's Executive Orders that never seems to get fact-checked for some reason. I don't know why, maybe. But, yeah. So if you want to see some trouble, I do a thing, I Easter egg stuff. So, because I figured out how to beat the algorithm, is what you do is you sandwich the part that they don't want to see between two inoffensive pieces. So in the middle of most videos, there's something revealing. Like if there's one of them where you can find a naked kid dangling out of a window at Buckingham Palace, but that's not really and didn't happen. So I just have footage. That's the thing, is everybody's like, how do you know these things? And I'm like, I've just been collecting information since I got red pilled. And it all comes out. And WikiLeaks was a big part of it. A lot of people don't pay attention to WikiLeaks, but they were talking about the whole thing with the fall of Libya. Once you see that as a baseline of how the government operates, you already know what you're up against. So, but anyway, I got a couple gigs lined up for April, Eagles and Anderson, doing a benefit for them to keep them open, and then we got a 2-nighter the next night in the dead heart of Indiana. We're going to do a couple drive-by comedy shows on that, and then generally on Thursday nights I'm at Crackers Comedy Club in Indy, and I'm working the open mic and trying to grow a new crop of comics, and just trying to pay it forward, because the comedy industry got pretty much blammoed. And it's a fact, like I said, factory reset, so it's a chance to grow a whole new crop of people that aren't weird. The weird ones are already out there, but we got
extra weird.
more weird ones in. So I'm pro comic, so that's kind of what I do.
Very nice. All right, well, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And, guys, thanks for listening, watching. Obviously, this thing, you can find it on all the podcast platforms that there are. Don't forget to check out Blurred Lines, where basically we talk about a lot of the stuff we talked about today, but we focus primarily on the conspiracies, or truths, as I like to say. But check out my sponsors. Don't forget myvibe.com. That's myvyv.com, and Black Label Chronometers, and Shank 15 is the code you want to use. And as far as I'm going to be here and other places. I've got a lot of shit on my calendar. Check out my website, WJAcomedy.com. It's brand new. That's why I'm brain farting on stuff. It's Winking Jeep Army, WJAcomedy.com. You can find all of my merchandise there with the Winking Jeep stuff. You'll find my calendar there, which is always expanding. Thanks, guys, for being here. And don't forget, cuts. Okay.
Stay Jeepy.
Stay Jeepy. See, now you gave me a new T-shirt.
I want to wait till he hits stop on that.
I'm still gonna stand up.
Well,
Welcome to the show. It's all fake.